everybody, welcome back to our conferences from the knowledge of oneself. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting and also not very well mentioned topic in many of the spiritual paths that people are following nowadays. It is very important to emphasize the study of these psychological aggregates or defects because they usually distort the way we see ourselves and the way we perceive the advance of our inner work. So they're very important. Okay, so this is already conference number 23 from the phase A cycle of conferences, 53 conferences, and these are all based on Gnostic teachings. Just to mention again, if you're coming for the first time to watch our videos, the previous videos are found in our Facebook website or fan page, as well as in our YouTube channel, which has the same name, Knowledge of Oneself English. Okay, so let's wait for a few minutes, maybe 2 more minutes, for people to come and log in, and then we can start. Just to mention again, if you're new in this cycle of conferences, we are right now in conference number 23, but the previous conferences, you can find them also in this Facebook channel and in our YouTube channel as well. We are talking about different topics regarding the liberation of the consciousness, such as astral projection. We're talking about the energetic centers of the body, which are different from chakras, but are also very essential to know and to work with, and also about the mysteries of death. We're also talking about the protections we use for our daily lives, and many other topics which are very important as well. So you can find them all in the video section, right? Let's start. So both Fanaticism and Mythomania are two defects that we must urgently eliminate from our psychology, and in order to advance in our objective work, as I said before. So we're gonna first start with Fanaticism, and it is very important to study this defect as well as with the other defect that we're going to talk about regarding believing our own lies and believing our own perceptions of reality, distorted reality. Okay, so let's start. This is not moving. Let me see. So let me turn on the camera. Yeah, webcam. There you go. You can see me there. Yep, you can see me there. All right. So yeah, let's start. Fanaticism. The fanatic is a person who becomes incredibly zealous based only on a belief. Fanaticism is like a disease for the mind, right? It leads us to believe that only by being a believer we are saved. This happens a lot in many different spiritual schools nowadays, or pseudo-esoteric schools, in which they have a lot of emphasis on information, on delivering data, on delivering facts about important things that you might know or don't know about your spiritual path. But one thing is just to inform and know and read it, and a different one is actually to prove it and practice it, so you can see the difference. so you can see if it's real or not, or if it's helping you. So knowledge, when someone receives this knowledge, we're talking about specifically this knowledge of oneself, and they know what they need to do, we have two paths open for them, right? So we have the path of the one that is going to be the practitioner and the one who's going to be the believer, right? So this is the huge difference, and you must be very serious with this and very honest with yourself. So which path are you going to follow? Usually people tend to follow the believer path because it's easier, because you don't have to face many things in your inner world, in your psychology. You just avoid very important aspects of the work, and you just preach. Yeah, you preach it, but you don't practice it. So the opposite is the practitioner, right? The practitioner is gonna be a pragmatic person that is gonna prove, is gonna see if it works, if it's helping, if it's actually making a difference and changing, transforming the way you see things, the way you perceive your reality. So it is a huge difference. Okay, so it is very important to make it clear that once you receive this knowledge, you have two paths to follow. Yeah, but it's up to you if you want to be just a believer, or if you want to practice it and see by yourself if it works and if it helps. So the believer thinks or believes that just by knowing it's enough. Yeah, like I know this, I know how it works, I know the principles, I know how it functions, I know everything about it. But from the moment they receive this or that teaching, they tend to portray themselves to others as saints, as like enlightened beings. Here we find the fanatic, which will not allow us to progress in any way. Yeah, this is a psychological aggregate that I would say each one of us have, maybe in different degrees, but it's very important to see it, yeah, to discover it and see how it is affecting us, right? So it will not allow us to progress in any way. And we have like a false sense of the self. That is also a concept that is mentioned in Gnostic teachings. The false sense of the self, right? It is related with the fanatic, and this makes us believe that we are doing well, that we are doing good, and it doesn't allow us to really make any progress at all, right? This is like self-deceiving ourselves, right? And we feel that, yeah, we're good, that we're doing it good, that we might be acting in the way that we're expected or following these practices, and that's enough. But sometimes people don't even practice it, but they just preach it and pretend that they're practicing. And you see that we have there only a believer, not a person that is proving and seeing with his own eyes, with his senses, if this is working or not. That's the big difference. First and foremost, this knowledge is revolutionary, and we can only achieve results by means of action. In this path, we can only advance by the work we put into action. If there is no psychological death, there is no liberation of the consciousness. That's very clear. The first step is the psychological death, the practice of the psychological death, or the pillar of the psychology, which is one of the pillars of these teachings, right? So in this practice, we are seeking or looking for the liberation of the little sparks of consciousness that are trapped in every single thought, emotion, feeling, desire, or action that we might perform in an unconscious way. And it's usually the ego behind us pulling the threads and making us act in such way. So that's what we're looking for with the psychological death, is to rescue that consciousness that is trapped in those psychological defects, you see? And so that we can actually perceive the present time, the present moment, like a mindful state of being, see? If we do not practice sexual birth, we will not have our existential bodies. So the practice of the Tantra, White Tantra, or White Tantrism, which we're talking about here, it's related with the creation also of the existential bodies of the being, which are vehicles that will help us move between different dimensions, right? We know that we are multidimensional beings. We know that. We also talk about that in one of our conferences. And as we are multidimensional beings, but still we have a physical body, which is a cellular body, is too heavy and it's too dense to use it in other dimensions. So that's not possible for us to move along those dimensions. You see, we might need an astral body, a mental body, or a causal body, other vehicles, and not this physical vehicle, because it will not help us navigate through those dimensions. You see. And if we do not practice, we cannot verify anything that we are teaching here. We cannot verify it for ourselves, you see. So that's why it is so important, right? I have a little issue here with the slides. Let me see. Right. All right. So, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the practitioner demonstrates this understanding in his actions or her actions. The fanatic becomes completely annoyed by this because he is moved by the defects of laziness and envy, and expects to self-realize without any effort or work at all. So that this is happening a lot nowadays because there is a increasing tendency or trend on practicing spiritual paths that are not maybe looking for the self-realization or the complete liberation of the consciousness, you see. And let's say that these people maybe they just want to change certain things in the way they think, in the way they feel, but there are even more transcendental states that can be reached with appropriate practices and appropriate inner states, yeah, with discipline. But sometimes we are too lazy and we tend to feel envy towards others, right? So we're that is not letting us actually advance, you see. But it's also keeping us behind because we're not working towards it. We just want it to be easy. As I said in another conference, like now the spiritual path is perceived like a hill full of flowers and covered with grass and a rainbow at the end and flowers and like all those kinds of beautiful things. But in reality, the spiritual path is more like a mountain from the Himalayas, yeah, which is steep and high, and you have to climb it with effort, and you have to stop sometimes, and then keep going, and then until you reach the top. So it is more like that, to see it in that way. It is more like a mountain. Fanaticism, in terms of the same what I'm just mentioning before, it put us down. Yeah, it makes us like useless. We do not put any effort on our work or in our practices, and it makes us become worthless. I know this sounds very strong, but if we're looking for a very precise and disciplined path, and we follow the practices, we follow the teachings that we're receiving, right? It will just makes us blind. Yeah, that's why I put that picture behind me. It's because we put like we're like blindfolded actually, and we think that what we're doing is okay, but actually it's not. But still we might know it, but we do not acknowledge it. So we become useless for this purpose of the consciousness, you see. What we're looking to achieve is that every one of us becomes revolutionary, right? That everyone advances, like a true soldier on a battlefield, without fanaticism, united to see results, real results, created by the means of the effort, your individual effort, and the usage and application of the practices. So, people that tend to have like a strong fanatic defect or I, psychological aggregate, they usually come here, they become instructors or teachers, and they start teaching conferences, and they start even being directors of groups of these teachings as well. But they trick those students, they start tricking them, and they're actually looking for the liberation. They're actually looking for find a way to stop the samsara wheel from spinning around and coming back to earth more times. Yeah, so they're looking for a very sincere and honest path. But these fanatics, let's say, they will find a means to actually see that people that do not follow the same like thread, the same thought, they will just remove them from the group and treat them as rebels and treat them as if they were treasoning others, you know. So that's really bad. That's like very unfair with those people who are looking for a real spiritual path. So that is very dangerous, as you see. So this effect doesn't allow us to see that we all have the subjective elements within. So those subjective elements that I'm referring to are the ego. Because the ego is not just one little thing that we tend to see like, oh, that person has a lot of ego, or it's like egocentric, and you know, ego is much more bigger than that. It is bigger than that. It is part of our energy field. It is in our ADN. It is found in every single part of our physical body. So this defect doesn't let us actually see those parts, which are the small parts that make up the ego, right? The defects, yeah, that are living inside of each one of us, right? And we have not worked towards the transformation. We have not eliminated them. And you know that the practice is the one that makes us masters, yeah. So this defect doesn't even allow us to create also the existential bodies of the being, which is the purpose of one of the pillars of the teachings, the spiritual birth, or sexual alchemy, or white tantrism. Okay, this is now moving. Alright. So in order to awaken and rise the Kundalini, because again, if you're new, yes, we're talking about the famous Kundalini energy here as well. It is a very powerful and important aspect of real spirituality. And this defect, so that in order to awaken the rise the Kundalini energy, we need to refrain from being traders disguised among tamed sheep. That the work is for us to do, and that the biggest mistake that we can make is to believe and feel that we are good. By this, I'm not blaming you, and I'm in no way I'm just trying to tell you that you're terrible, you're a monster, you're bad. We have very obscure or like occult parts within our psychology. We do not see them very well. It is even hard for us to actually perceive them, right, with the mere senses. But yes, they are there in our subconscious mind. And those elements have been living there for many times, for a long time, for many existences or lives before when we created them, plus the ones that we're creating right now. So that's why ego is becoming even bigger and bigger, right? So to believe that we are good is not enough. Yeah, liberation cannot be attained by just being good and being like, yeah, like pretending to be being good. That is not gonna work. Yeah, that is self-deceiving yourself. I'm not telling you that you should treat others as the way you think you should, like treat them badly and not being um, polite. No, I'm not saying that, right? So we need to see this in a very objective way, right? And see that we tend to believe that we are saints, that we are actually acting in a good way, that we are fair, that we treat everyone as they deserve, right? But then someone else does the same with us or to us, and then we explode. So where's that person that you said you were? That you were calm and you were relaxed and you were respectful and tolerant. But at that time, in that situation, you lose yourself because you're identified with that situation. So you're not good at all. You see? We have very, very, very hidden parts of ourself, of our ego within our inner world. We need to discover them. That's what we're doing here. Yeah? To see beyond that thin veil that we have upon our eyes that doesn't let us see what's going on within because we are so focused on the outside world. But yeah, it is very important to start seeing this as well, that we are not good at all. We pretend to be good, we think that we're good, but if we die tomorrow and then we have, say, like a divine law of judgment, we will clearly see that not all of our actions were conscious and were fair. So let us reflect on some of the details of the fanatic. So, the fanatic has many aspects that are very important to consider. So if you want to advance and if you want to really see things in an objective way and stop seeing them subjectively, because that is the same, self-deceiving, like your own path. See? So there is no known fanatic that has awakened. That is because they do not practice. So if you want to become awakened beings, if you want the real liberation, if you want to attain consciousness, well, you need to practice by believing, by imagining things, or like Carl Jung said, imagining bright lights around you. That is not gonna lead you to enlightenment. That is actually just believing your own lies. So it is important to see through that, right? So the practice is the key. They do not like to verify anything. So as we taught you the astral projection practice, you can verify many things by yourself. So if there are certain things that maybe we're saying here that we are telling you that you think that maybe it's not like that, or maybe that sounds weird, you can actually go to the astral world in your sleep time when you dream, and you can investigate, you can research about it. So fanatics think that the esoteric work is something easy, like twinkling of an eye, and it's not like that. No, as I said, it's not just chanting and imagining rainbows and imagining lights surrounding you. No, that is just a mere exterior or external part of many things that we think are true. But the real work requires more than that, more effort. Okay? So they don't like to work. That's it. They are followers of others. So this is a tendency that let's say, has taken place for a long time in these lineages of gurus and masters, and many people tend to think that we always need a guru or a teacher right next to us in every single moment of our practices, of our meditations, of our techniques, you see. It's not like that, yeah, because it's easier to follow. It is very easy to be a follower, so they tend to be like that. They always want to have a teacher, you see. So they do not follow the real self. They are imitators. So as we want an external teacher next to us, we are like ignoring our real self, which is our real teacher, right? Our real self is just far from us right now because we are not conscious. We are very, very submerged in a profound sleep. So it is very hard for us to connect with our real self, right? Because we need to start working on that little by little, yeah? And these people tend to be imitators, so they see things that others maybe are preaching, or they are telling everyone that they are enlightened, and they start imitating that behavior or the way that person talks and walks, yeah? So it's not about that, no, because that is ignoring the wisdom of your real self. They live vicariously through others' experiences. Exactly the same with the previous one, right? So they are teaching and talking about people's experiences and others maybe that are more advanced students or teachers from this knowledge, and they start like say like teaching and using those experiences, but they have not tried them by themselves. So it becomes just a belief, a thought, a memory. They affirm things they have not proven to be certain, what others have simply said. The same. So not practicing, not proving, they don't know for certain if it's true or not because they haven't seen it. They haven't tried any method or way or practice to see if it's real or if it's not. They speak of experiences of others without understanding them. That's exactly the same. Yeah, they might be giving examples. They might be using stories from other people in this knowledge, but they don't even understand what the stories are telling behind. Like the esoteric meaning of that story. So they just see it with the very rational and intellectual way that we tend to see things nowadays. But that is not the wisdom that we're looking for. They do not like those who want to demonstrate by means of action. So I said that before, they tend to repel people who are actually practicing, who are actually being able to see many things in the astral world. They are proving things that they wanted to know, right? So they tend to repel, and they just don't like people that actually practice this, They just ignore them or make fun of them. So they appear to always be criticizing the fellow man. Exactly the same. They will always see the negative aspect and will be criticizing everything they see from them. The fanatic begins to attack the practitioner to diminish their strength. I just said before. They are hindering elements within groups. They originate entropy within. So the entropy is a phenomenon in which you are like stacked in certain point, and then you cannot advance. So you start going back. You're going back. See? So that's what some fanatics, most of them, tend to do, right? So they are just like an obstacle. They're not helping. They are the worst enemies of an organization. Yeah, because they might have ideas, they might have concepts, that they believe themselves to be truth, but they are not. Yeah, so they start spreading that and gossiping about it and manipulating people or new students, and then they become enemies of the teachings. Yeah, because in the end what matters are the teachings, not us, not the teachers. They look within groups to put themselves in positions where they appear as if they are doing the work. This happens a lot. Yeah, sometimes instructors from different places, cities, or countries are working towards a determined same goal, and at some point, more people are start joining, joining the project or joining that plan, and they just want to be there, just to appear as if they were doing something or practicing or doing their work, but they are not. They are imitators and they like to appear that they are doing something the same. They teach the practices, but they don't practice. Yeah, you see? So that's the path of the believer. Just preaching, repeating, saying things without proving and practicing. They speak of psychological death, but they do not die. Do not die. So if you are new, you might think, what the hell is a psychological death? Well, that's also one of our conferences, and that's part of our psychology pillar, yeah, from the 4 pillars of this knowledge. So it is a practice in which you are observing your own self, your inner world, and you're detecting, or you're kind of finding, discovering those psychological aggregates that are working from moment to moment, from second to minute, and they are stealing your energy, your mind energy, your mental energy, and they are stealing your consciousness as well. So for instance, if you are performing a mechanical action, I don't know, like let's say taking a shower, and at that time you're going to start thinking about things that have nothing to do with that action. You will start feeling things that have nothing to do with that event, and then you'll see that our mind and we are fragmented, right? My mind is somewhere else, my emotions are feeling something from the past, I'm going to the future, I'm going to the past, I feel sad, I feel anxious. So it is all about that. So that psychological death practice is about stopping that. Yeah, being able to observe those things happening in front of your eyes and asking help from your divine mother to eliminate them so that you can be in the present time. See, that was like a quick review of that practice. They speak of a spiritual birth, but they do not create, so no sexual alchemy. With the ability to do more sacrifice for humanity, they do not do it. They are satisfied with the bare minimum. So the same sacrifice for humanity is what I'm doing right now. This is sharing the teachings without expecting anything in return, just freely for the people that feel that this is going to help them in their inner path. Okay. Whoops, I think this one is, which is, oh, I went too far. Sorry, I have to go back. I have to go back more. There you go. So they believe that with what they know, they will be saved. So the same. If we think that just by knowing, just by hearing from this, just by attending the conference, just by writing some notes and that's it, you are saved. No, there's no way. You're not transforming yourself. If you're not changing yourself and transforming your own self, that's not going to happen. Do not expect it to happen, right? You need effort and you need to work towards it. They believe just because they receive the teachings, they have attained salvation or enlightenment, which is farther from the truth. They always believe they are doing well. Yeah, the false feeling of the self. They believe they are doing better than others. They consider themselves to know more based on the many years that they have been in this teaching. So sometimes there are people that have been even years, many years in these teachings, following the teachings, but they are actually being more like followers, right? Believers, not practitioners. So it doesn't matter if you have been here for a long time, maybe you haven't advanced that much because of that, because you're not practicing, you're just repeating and reading and getting more information but not practicing. They follow to the let me see. I don't see the text, the complete test. I don't know why. Okay. Yeah, so they follow everything they see in the books and they read a lot. So they're very intellectual. They just want more, gather more information and more and more and more information, right? No, that is not gonna help, because you will see that with time you're getting rid of many things that are not useful for your progress in the spiritual path. And those have to do a lot with the concepts and the ideas that are imposed from theories and from books themselves. They can recall minute details of what they study. They're very intellectual. They want to show off they know a lot. So it's a lot of pride behind that. Yeah, they want to feel proud of themselves because they're showing off. They always end up distorting the teachings, and its objective is to serve humanity. That's very sad. To see others as condemned, they tend to see the others as they're condemned because they do not accept teachings as really a practitioner, yeah, a real practitioner. They want to turn the teachings into fanaticism. They want to turn the teachings into a religion. Yeah, sometimes that even happens. So basically, religions are just holding the exoteric knowledge, right? The external knowledge, which is lacking from the deeper understanding and the comprehension behind the esoteric knowledge. So, yeah, you see, that's not what we're looking for. There are enthusiasts of rituals. The fanatic is a victim of the abyss because they neither do anything nor stop from doing harmful things. And when someone has an initiative to work, to do something, they are the first to point a finger and criticize them for make them fall, because they don't do anything themselves, nor do they want anyone else to do. Okay, so I know this was long, but in brief, it's like they do not let others to advance, but they don't do it as well, and they cause harm even to others. So they're not doing anything, they're not helping, they're being useless. They waste their time miserably socializing and the gatherings. They repeat the same things over and over again. They're always ready to start a controversy. They are argumentative. They love to debate. Yeah, they just like to attend to these meetings to show off and create controversy and make others feel maybe insecure, right? To debate. So, very common. They make strong affirmations that one must enter temples with the right foot because the left is a negative. What is negative is which we carry within our psyche, right? All the wrong things and those shadows and darkness that we are afraid of are usually within ourselves. So we can expect just to focus on the external world and avoid certain things because it is said that it is not okay, but that's not true. It's just focusing on very shallow aspects of teachings. They affirm that women cannot direct prayer chains because they are very passive. Yeah, there are even men that have said things like this, which is, again, far away from the truth that we're looking for. So we cannot just fall into the concepts of feminism or chauvinism because they're not the truth. We're following, like the Buddha said, the middle path. We're looking for the truth, the balance, not the concepts and the identification with those things which we think are true for us, but they're not. They believe themselves to be prophets and claim things they have not proven. That happens a lot. They go about speaking of tragedies and cataclysms. Nowadays, with all the situations that we are facing, I know it is sometimes hard to not do this, but it's important to see why those things are taking place and the cycles of the planet and the cosmic events that are taking place are things that have been happening before. So it's not just about instilling fear to others, but trying to understand and comprehend in a much bigger picture all these events. Okay, so they have the eye of apocalypse, or the psychological defect of apocalypse, which thinks that this is apocalypse and this is the end and we're going to all die and everyone is going to die, we deserve to die, and this is the end, right? They always go about pointing out and ridiculing other fanatics because they see their own defect reflected in the mirror. Yeah, that's what usually happens with our psychology. We see our own defects in other people's personality, you see, and then we are pointing at that person, but are actually pointing at ourselves. Like their law of correspondence again. They never followed advice and they're very proud. They are like weed. You can find them anywhere. See? It is of extreme importance to start seeing in a deeply way and find conclusions in the study of this defect of the fanatic, right? To self-observe and not allow ourselves to act like that, like the fanatic does, like all the things that I have just mentioned, which are a lot. Okay, so now let's go about the Mythomania. Let me see if this is working. Yeah. Okay, so the Mythomania is another defect which we should be careful with, right? So it is a strong and distinct tendency found commonly amongst people which are affiliated with with various schools of metaphysics. Sorry, we have a little mistake here with the diagrammation. Right. Okay. So apparently very straightforward people after hallucinations become mythomaniacs overnight. So this is another thing that is very dangerous, right? I would say that this is even more dangerous than the other one. Both are, but this one is something that we should be paying attention, especially nowadays, because I know a lot of people who tend to believe things that are completely far from reality, but it's because of certain experiences or beliefs that they have that they think they're truth, and they're preaching all of these things. So very dangerous. Without a doubt, such people with subjective psyches almost always manage to take by surprise those who are unsuspecting, and in turn they become their followers. Alright, again we have here some issues. Oops, alright, so yeah. Let's see. So still talking about this, this person believes that the occult teachings, the occult sciences, right, is just like twinkling an eye. That's like super easy. And at some point, they call themselves like they are masters, right? Like a Mahatma or a guru, and then they believe that because they saw something in astral world, because they smoke this drug or this hallucinogenic substance, they saw things in a certain way, and then someone told them that they were a guru from previous generations, right? So this is happening a lot nowadays, I have to say it. I've seen many people fall into this because of different aspects, but it's very dangerous. We should very paying attention to this. The mythomaniac generally has impossible dreams and invariably suffers from what is called delusions of grandeur. This type of people present themselves as reincarnations of masters or fabulous legendary heroes from fiction. However, it is clear that we are emphasizing something that deserves explanation. See? Egoistic centers of the animal subconscious, of our subconscious mind, where we find the ego, right? That we have those legions of psychological aggregates, yeah, or the eyes, work in conjunction with one another, and they create false mental projections. The mythomaniac then mixes external phenomena, the outer world, with these false projections in their minds, creating illusory interpretations of such phenomena, by logic of these aggregates resulting in the personification of the same pluralized. By pluralized we mean that many defects or parts of the ego, yeah? So the personification of that pluralized ego as something like spirits. The false sense of the self that I mentioned before, creating these false associations, and will use these illusions to support their delusion of grandeur. Very dangerous, as you see. These defects are and they're so common nowadays. I can tell you that I've seen so many people falling into this delusion of grandeur, and it's just because of an subjective experience that they had. They performed certain, I don't know, especially with drugs. Let's be honest. Drugs are not going to lead you to enlightenment. They have nothing to do with enlightenment. They're the opposite, because they're just creating these hallucinations in your psyche, and then you have all those psychological aggregates walking around your mind, and they will start supporting those hallucinations, right? And then you will feel identified with that, and then you start inventing theories or inventing names, and then believing that you're a Mahatma or a guru, which is happening nowadays. It is not unusual for any psychic aggregate to assume a Jesus Christ form in order to dictate false oracles. Any of these many entities which in conjunction constitute that which is called the ego, which is a bigger thing, can, if so wishes, acquire the form of a Mahatma or a guru. Therefore, when the dreamer returns to the state of wakefulness, he will say to himself, I am self-realized. I am a master. Wow. Yeah, this is, this is really dangerous stuff. People who are telling other people what to do, to save their souls, to follow them, to give them money, to worship them, yeah, and they're even enslaving more and more their consciousness by making or deceiving those people who want to actually find a real practice of consciousness and to liberate their consciousness. So it's very sad. It's very sad, and it's something that we should not ignore. Okay? It must be observed with respect to this matter that in the subconscious of all people lies the latent tendency to take advantage of impersonation. Yeah, you can see an example of this in the picture here. This is the classical reason for which many Eastern gurus caution against all possible forms of self-deceit before initiating their disciples in transcendental magic. Because if they don't see this before initiating those works, they will start believing themselves as if they were, uh, you know, masters that came from other galaxies and other worlds and other realities and gurus, right? And they will start distorting the teachings, distorting the principles that they were taught, and then they're not disciples anymore because they consider that they were too values or they valuable or if they were too like superior, and they just started creating new things, practices, and preaching different things. You see, it is very important to take this into account. It is impossible to awaken the consciousness, making it totally objective, like looking at the real perspective, without previously eliminating the subjective elements of perception. Such infrahuman elements are formed by the entire multiplicity of the rolling and low-mouthed eyes or psychological defects that in conjunction constitute the ego and the myself. The essence imprisoned within all the subjective incoherent entities sleeps profoundly. Sadly, it is like that. You can check by yourself. Check your mind. Change the state of your psychology. How is it today? Did you start hearing voices at the time we were going to bed? Did you start making up conversations with a person in your mind, believing that you're talking to that person, but you're talking to yourself? You see? All those are examples of how our consciousness is completely trapped, right? In all these subjective perceptions, feelings, thoughts, ideas, right? And then the consciousness just sleeps. The annihilation of each one of these infrahuman entities is indispensable to liberate the essence. Only by the emancipation and consequent awakening of the essence does enlightenment come. So as I said before, enlightenment won't come to you just by being good, being nice, treating others in a nice way, and say hi to everybody, or just offering things to everybody. No, it is important. It is part of being humans, and that's something necessary. But that's not gonna lead you towards liberation. For that, you need to start transmuting yourself, right? Eliminating those infrahuman entities which are making up the ego, so that you can liberate the essence that they have trapped. As you can see in the picture, we have this little guy which represents a spark of consciousness that was liberated through the psychological death. See? And just by that, we will be able to attain a real enlightenment. So, we believe that the sincerely mistaken one, the one who believes to be awakened but is completely asleep, the mythomaniac that believes himself to be super transcended, the hallucinating one who qualifies himself as awakened, which happens a lot, in truth can and often does much more harm to humanity than the one who never in his life has entered into these studies. As I said before, people come here sometimes, they receive the teachings, they start practicing, and then they have an experience, but they did not, or they were not wise enough to interpret that experience, and they took it in a completely different way, and then they start distorting the teachings and start telling people things that are not real, and they misinterpret the teachings. for the rest of people surrounding that person. And that is even much more dangerous, and that be more harmful than any other thing. We're speaking in a very blunt language. Yeah, you can see that. However, you can rest assured that many asleep on disillusioned people who are reading these words. So instead of stopping and like to reflect, to make an introspection and to rectify themselves, instead of that they will find a way to just appropriate these words with the purpose of supporting their madness. They can even let's say like twist my words, or twist the words of the teachings, just to support their own beliefs, their subjective beliefs. The worst genre of madness occurs with the combination of mythomania and hallucinations. This class of subjects, upon studying this chapter, will accommodate these words to others and think himself or herself to have already dissolved the ego, even though their ego may be more robust than a gorilla. Okay, this is a little bit also like a very blunt way of saying things, but we have to do it like that. I've heard many people who say that they have, let's say, eliminated their ego completely, and then you ask them certain things like, have you understood or comprehended these aspects of your mind? Have you observed these voices? Have you felt this? Have you observed this other? Have you reflected on this? And then that person might be like very shallow in the comprehensions. You see, the deeper the comprehensions are through meditation to understand those parts of your mind, the more you might say that that person is even getting closer to that, to dissolving the ego. But otherwise, it's just self-deceiving themselves. That's what they're doing, telling others that they have eliminated the ego and they're pure. But then, if you could read their minds, you will see that that's not true. We have seen very ugly cases. It is something frightening seeing the mythomaniacs, the asleep, disillusioned ones, prophesizing madness, slandering their fellow men, and even accusing others to be black magicians. We have heard this like very frequently, and it's really disappointing and sad to see people who are or who were at the beginning following path for consciousness, to become more aware, to become closer to the real self, to have a more direct communication with the real self, but instead they're just misinterpreting things and then even defaming other people and treating them badly. It is terrible if we are not able to see how this defect affects so much, not only us, but what we can do to others. So it's very important, very, very crucial to see how this is working in our psychology. How it is working, especially people who are taking all these substances like that are like creating hallucinations, let's say, in their minds, because they will start believing that those hallucinations are the real and are the reality. And then we have the story from the cave from Plato, and it's the same. They will start seeing things and they will perceive them as the reality, but the reality is even farther than that. It requires consciousness to see it, and with drugs and all those substances, we're not really gonna get it. We're gonna get even further from it because we're not gonna listen to our real self. But different other entities or energies that are coming with those practices. From this point, they live and establish new pseudo-esoteric schools, shining like presumptuous lights and then end up closing them, leaving their followers confused and disoriented. These people result in establishing the eye of pseudo-esotericism in their psyche along with the recurrence. So, the recurrence means that they have done this from previous lives. They are, let's say, like twisting teachings and knowledge, ancient teachings and knowledge, just because they like it that way and they think it is okay that way, because they think they are enlightened. And even teachings that were given by ascended or enlightened masters from ages, they even smash those teachings just by saying that they are masters and they can do it better, which is a lot of pride. You can see a lot of pride behind that if you study yourself. Alright, so this is the conference for today. It has many aspects, it has many things that we should reflect upon, many different ways of seeing this, to analyze, to perceive it, to discover it, and see if we're acting in such way or if we are being objective. See, the worst mistake is to believe and feel as we are good, as I said before. We really don't know that we have so many elements in our psyche that we cannot count them with our fingers and toes. It's impossible. We have many things living in our mind, taking away that energy, taking our consciousness, but we think they're normal, right? They are part of a human being and they are something that we should live with every day, but in fact it's not. And you will start seeing actually that they have their own will. When you start studying yourself, you start studying your own self, your mind, your psychology, you will see that they even have a will, and they can destroy all your study and all the effort that you have been doing to achieve a more conscious state. Okay, so it's something that we should look for. We should be looking for as an objective to understand even more our spiritual path. Okay, so this was the conference for today. I hope it was clear. I hope if you have comments or questions, just send it inbox or in the comment section or in YouTube. We will be looking forward to reply to you, and thank you for coming. These are our social media platforms, so you can write to us on this WhatsApp, and if you have questions, this is our Facebook fan page, our YouTube channel, and our Instagram. Okay, so thank you for being here, thank you for watching the conference, and we'll see you next week with this topic, which is called the life and the level of being, right? So I'll see you next week. Bye.